What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online show. Zach Abalverde and Nick Del Toro here, and we are back for another one in the swamp. Night game in the swamp, sold out crowd, and stepping out of conference play for just one more week before things get geared back up again at Kentucky. But we've got a lot to get into on today's show. We've got certainly a little bit to recap with the Gators win over the Vols, what that's meant for this week, and maybe some practices that have been not up to the standard, and what that might look like for Saturday as the Gators host Charlotte. Nick, how are you doing, my friend?
Back from the dead. Caught the itis some point last weekend and woke up on Monday with like 104 fever. So it's just been a struggle this week. Just been crawling through the week, and I emerge here on Friday ready to go, sort of, as good as I felt this week.
Yeah, I was it was good that you at least got to be able to experience the game in the swamp on Saturday night, and get your thoughts up, get your grades up, and then after that, man, you were off the grid. But we're glad to have you back. We will push back the show to Friday so we could still bring you guys a preview episode. So we'll get a little bit into the Vols, the win over the Vols. Don't want to gloat on the Gators too much there, because maybe that's had an impact into what we'll get about with how this week has played out. So we'll discuss that. We'll get into previewing this matchup with Charlotte, and then we'll give you some keys to the game and what we want to see from the Gators on Saturday, and obviously an opportunity for them to potentially play some young guys. I know that that's not a storyline that they want to hear or talk about, but it is an opportunity once again this weekend after they got up against McNeese. So, but before we do that one,
it is funny though, real quick. So like Billy Napier was asked before McNeese, like, hey, these type of games, and he took like exception to it on Monday. What do you mean, like these type of games? And then after they beat Tennessee, it's like, well, listen, we got embarrassed week one, and then we played McNeese, and then we played in front of 90,000 at home. It's like, wait, but McNeese wasn't that type of game. So like, yes, a coach shouldn't say, hey, listen, we're playing a bunch of, Joe Schmoes coming in town, but like, this is this type of game again.
It is. And, Richie Leonard was asked a question that was something along those lines. And shout out to Matt with coaching up on the SID side. Richie gave the right response there in terms of, would it be an opportunity for some young guys to get opportunities, and how much do the starters take it upon themselves to make sure that happens? And they're not thinking like that. Even though if they do their job well and they dominate, that will come to fruition. So we'll get into all of that on today's episode. We will also get to your questions as well. So if you have some, drop them in the live chat, and we'll pop them up on the screen when we get some time. But before we get any more into this episode, I want to give a shout out to birddogs.com. And if you go to birddogs.com and use our promo code Gator, you guys went so much that they ran out of the hats. So now you can get a free Hydro Flask style water bottle with your purchase, and there is a lot to purchase. You can get the hat that you see Nick rocking, as always. You can get the khaki shorts. You can get the polos. All of them fit well. Perfect, obviously, for football season and for game days. And the shorts especially have become a favorite of me and Nick. They fit the exact same way as Lululemon. They're designed to kind of replace the regular shorts that are made with more stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Again, as I mentioned, the polos as well have been a huge hit, and you can also get one of their hats online, but not for free. So make sure if you go to birddogs.com, use that promo code Gators, you can get a free Hydro Flask style water bottle with your purchase. Nick, we are talking about a Florida football team now that is back in the top 25. Did you think that was going to happen after the win?
Yeah, well, listen, you beat a top 11 team. I don't think Tennessee is one of the 11 best teams in the country. Probably, arguably, not one of the top 25 teams in the country. So you're going to get that kind of boost. But I'm kind of still with Billy Napier. Like you lost to a Utah team, then you beat McNeese, and then you beat who I think you and I, as we talked about it all week, thought was a Tennessee team that was being overhyped. So I still think Florida has a lot to prove that ranking. You're not going to be able to do that much this week. Next week is a huge road test. How do you handle going on the road again? Because you failed that test the first time. So not surprised that Florida snuck in. I don't think they were in on the coaches poll, but the AP poll, they get in there. It's nice to have to put a number before Florida when we write stories now, Zach. It had been a while. And this week gives you another opportunity to do something you haven't done in a while. Florida hasn't won 3 straight games since 2020.
Yeah, man, it's been a minute. Obviously, they had their opportunities last year. They got some back-to-back wins, but could never get that third straight, including losing at Vandy, which will be coming up just around the corner. As a matter of fact, that'll be the next home game that the Gators have for homecoming. So, but no, it's interesting. I don't know how much that's contributed to this week. I don't know if it's just the win. I don't know if it's the opponent. I don't know if it's the getting the monkey off their back, so to speak. I don't think that they've gotten over the hump, which we'll get into. Billy's been very pointed with his comments this week and his reaction to some questions. But this is our first show, Nick, since the Florida Tennessee game. Real quick, just your overall, a week removed takeaways from it and what it's meant for this team and certainly what that night meant for the program.
Listen, I called it a must-win game, and it wasn't like, hey, we weren't racing for pink slips. Like Billy wasn't going to get fired if they lost, but I thought in terms of this is your most winnable rivalry game a year coming off of losing to all of your rivals. In terms of you have a sold-out Swamp, it's a huge opportunity to build momentum. The Florida Tennessee game historically, our entire life, Zach, have been a swing game for either program. A win can send you to Atlanta or on your way to Atlanta. A loss can send you spiraling. So I thought that was going to be huge for Florida. A sold-out Swamp. I couldn't imagine where the mentality of the fan base would be if you had that crowd as good as they were and Florida still wasn't able to come up with a win. Then you're thinking, where is the program headed? Despite having a great recruiting class, despite the best players on the team being guys that were brought in by this coaching staff, I think you start to look and you go, where's the proof of concept? Is this just Ron Zook, where you're going to have great recruiting classes and then lose 4 games a year? So I thought Saturday was huge for Billy Napier as a head football coach, for Billy Napier as Florida's head football coach, and for the program and just for the mental health of the staff. Terrible for my physical health, but great for the mental health of people inside the program and outside the program. Inside the program and the fans. Inside the program, it's okay. Like all of that stuff we did in the spring, all of that, our journey, the process, the going through, waking up, lifting at 4:30 in the morning, like, hey, we're doing this for a reason. We're not doing this and then we're getting our teeth kicked in every time we play someone half decent on Saturday. Sure. So I think it was a huge game for Florida as a program. And to me, I thought the only way Florida could win is a low scoring game that had to kind of play keep away. The first drive, they come out almost 8 minutes, 14 plays. If you have a kicker, you get points on the board. Tennessee scores right back. They go off script thanks to Trevor Etienne with his 60-something yard run. But look at Florida's drives. 8 plays, 9 plays, 10, 12, 14. Florida wanted to sustain long drives, keep Tennessee's offense off the field. And I think Graham Mertz and Billy Napier and the offense executed that game plan to perfection. No notes.
Yeah, they had to get a turnover as well. I think that this was the game where it needed to show up. You think of some of the huge wins that Florida's had in this rivalry, specifically in the Swamp, and there's been some turnovers that have shown up in those matchups. And I think to have it in that moment in the game when the Gators, started getting on a roll and started getting on a run, it was critical because it allowed them to get a short field, allowed them to kind of stack their lead, and just I picked them to win by 1 point. I thought it was going to take a perfect game. I thought that they were going to have to do all the things that you've mentioned, Nick, but I did not think that they would dominate them in the way that they did. They obviously took their foot off the gas in the second half, and Billy was the first one to admit that he got maybe too conservative with the play calling. But you got a defense that's playing lights out the way it is. You got the swamp rocking. You got a good running game. You got your center back who was mauling people out there. If you're reading the Gators online message board, I get it. They were trying to certainly milk that clock, as Nick said, and just sit on that lead. Maybe they won't take that approach in the future with teams that can't score as fast as Tennessee can. But one thing I will say, and it was in my takeaways, like, man, they handled that tempo. And we didn't know it at the time, but we learned it through the week that apparently Austin Armstrong instituted a unrealistic tempo in practice. They were basically running plays every 4 seconds, it sounded like. And at one point during the game, Austin asked his defense, "Is Tennessee's tempo faster than mine?" And which it wasn't. And because they handled it very well and they were prepared for it. They were getting lined up. Princely thought that there was really only one play where they didn't get lined up and it cost them. But they were very prepared. And, man, not only was Florida getting lined up, and I think that maybe affected Tennessee's tempo, but so did the crowd. All of the false starts and the times that they had to call timeout and just the noise that they created. The players gave them credit. Napier did. I mean, Graham Mertz literally gave the fans a round of applause in his post-game press conference. So it was much needed all around. One thing that I gotta say, Nick, I gotta say this, and I'll remove this so you can put my name back up there, and maybe we'll clip this bad boy out. I think it's important to note, because I've seen this all throughout social media in the days following Florida's win over Tennessee, that this took Billy Napier off the hot seat. Like this was a game where the fans had already turned against him and this saves him. Like, that narrative is just not true, Nick. I mean, this was a must-win game in the sense of where this program was, him needing to get a rivalry win. I think him certainly needing to generate excitement for the fan base, which was down after that Utah loss, and to confirm a lot of the commitments that he's landed from recruits. But at the end of the day, Billy was not in a situation where he was on the hot seat or his AD or the university was questioning the hire that he made. He was going into the third game of his second year in a dramatic rebuild. So yes, maybe there was some fan frustration and there was some angst and displeasure, but he was not on the hot seat. He was not in a position where he was about to get fired if he did not win that game. And I think that narrative that's been painted is just not true.
Yeah. I think we've kind of talked about that. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And listen, I think knee-jerk reactions get clicks, and maybe if Billy Napier went 2-10 this year and beat like McNeese and Charlotte,
sure,
then like maybe at the end of the year Florida would make a move. But like, hot seat talk was not realistic. And you can even say like, well, I don't think he's going to get fired this year, but look at Florida's schedule next year. And if they go 4-8 this year and then start bad, it's like, all right, cool. That still doesn't mean you're on the hot seat last September or, last week on September 16th.
Sure.
Florida needed that win, I think, though.
They did. No, it was a must-win game. At Gators Online, I did 5 must-win games for Florida in the 2023 season, and I put Tennessee number 1 on that list. You were calling it a must-win, but it was for, I think, all those reasons that I mentioned, but not in the sense of his job was on the line and he was on the hot seat. That was not where this thing was at. nor has it even got close to sniffing that. And if they had lost that game, what happens if he goes out and beats Florida State at the end of the season in the Swamp to beat a rival? Or what happens if they go on the road and win at LSU? I mean, you don't know how the season is going to play out. The SEC, what we've seen from the first few weeks is, I don't think it's maybe as dominant or you have so many teams that are ahead of others in this conference. There's some beatable opponents out there that Florida has on its schedule. And, regardless of what happened in the Tennessee game, there's still a lot of football left to be played. And that's going to kind of lead us into our next segment. But there also can't be too much, overreaction to this win. Like, yes, it was huge. They needed it. Billy needed it. The fans needed it. But it doesn't mean that they've arrived. And just because they're back in the top 25 and they've got all this momentum on their side, they still have a lot of issues that they have and a lot of things that they're not where they need to be yet as a roster.
Well, this team is still learning how to win and learning how to be winners. I think you see that from Billy Napier in his play calling in the second half. Listen, the play calling he had in the second half was, if we can just run the ball, convert some third downs, we're going to win this football game unless we fumble the ball a couple times. And that's the route he took. Very safe. Low chance for Trevor Etienne or Montrell Johnson to fumble the ball multiple times to allow Tennessee to get back into that game the way you're calling plays. It's not step on the throat. When Florida's up, what was it, like 26-7 or whatever it was, one more touchdown, like, hey, that game's cashed. Put the game on ice. And you're not actively going out and calling plays to try to make that happen. So Florida's still trying to learn how to win. And I think part of that is, how do you react after a big win like this? Do you want to just like roll over and have people scratch your belly and tell you how good you were? Or are you going to continue to work like you did after being embarrassed by shooting yourself in the foot at Utah and work hard the next 2 weeks to have that kind of result? So that's, I think, a little bit of what the coach talked about this week and what some players talked about this week. I also think they just say stuff like that in the media so that we write about it, so that then they can show the team headlines to be like, hey, look, they think you stink. They think you think you're better than you are.
Well, you were listening to the radio show, right? Like,
listen, we've got a little cocky Billy this week. Billy's walking around with his chest puffed out a little bit this week. I like to see it.
Yeah, he also said on his radio show that the media makes a bigger deal out of these things.
Just writing quotes, my guy. Just writing quotes.
Look, man, when you say that the team is not sharp and you say that the team has been inconsistent and the players say that the practices have been unacceptable, that's what I think reporters and fans are going to gravitate toward. That's what they're going to hear.
That's what the coaches want us to write. So they say it, we write it. And then they can show the players, look at the media, look at them. They don't believe you. They still think you stink. Listen, to tip of the hat, Bill.
Although we'll hey, look, it's not just him though. I will say, if it's a coordinated effort, then
listen, man, Georgia last year won the SEC championship, and a player on the field said, "Y'all thought we were going to go 4-8." And it's like, who in their right mind said you guys were going to go? Nobody said that. And Kirby Smart's sitting back there giggling. Like, yeah. We had, I remember it was like before one of Alabama's championships, there was like a picture from the locker room, and it was like, Alabama is overrated. And the quote was attributed just to media. And it's like, no one said that. But like, a good coach will use the media to their advantage. And if the team now thinks, oh, the media thinks we stink, good. Maybe that'll make them play better. I for one, Zach, have covered only a couple of SEC championship games. None of them have gone well for Florida. I'd like to go back to Atlanta. I'd like to cover a college football playoff. If we need to be the villain to cover championships, consider me the Joker, the Riddler. I'll play that part.
We will write all those money quotes, those juicy quotes. And look, while it could be a message that is intentionally being sent, I do think that there's something to be said about what has taken place this week and the messaging that is trying to be sent, because it was clearly needed. It clearly needed to be there last year. And whether that was coming from Billy, whether that was coming from staff, whether that was coming from players themselves, everybody agrees that they did not handle success well last year. In fact, it was literally the first thing that Billy said to his team in the post-game press conference after he talked about the game, was that the lesson was from this night that, hey, we got wins like this last year and we didn't respond to them the right way. In his words, started looking in the mirror too much. So how does this team deal with that? Now, I also think that there's reasons for that, right? Like, it was still a year one. I think where the culture was obviously not where it is now. And you still had a lot of guys that were learning how to be a team, learning how to handle success, learning how to win games. You don't have as much of that this year, number one. But number two, I just think that there's as Billy said, this group will tell the truth to each other, and they will call out their teammates. And if they have a crappy practice, Cam Jackson and Taraja Mitchell are going to get the guys together and say something about it. Now,
man, Tyreek Sapp's going to be in your chest if you have a bad practice.
Absolutely.
SCA pride.
And, I think that there's a lot of guys that fall into that category. Kingsley Aguakin, Austin Barber, the Graham Mertzes of the world. I mean, these guys are not going to let stuff slide. And when they see guys slacking off, when they see guys losing their edge, when they see that hunger not there, they're going to nip it in the bud, because they know they've seen, either they were on the team last year or they came from teams that didn't win and they came here to win. Now, how much of, and obviously that's going to be affected this week against Charlotte, but there's something to be said about trying to get 3 wins in a row, which is something this program hasn't done since 2020. And then go on the road in the SEC and get a win and end this losing streak to Kentucky. I mean, how this team handles this stretch is going to say a lot about what type of season this is going to be, Nick.
Yeah. Don't have a letdown against Charlotte. Like, this is quintessential trap game. If you were tasked with defining it for Webster's dictionary, this is a trap game. You had a huge, emotionally draining rivalry win in front of a sold-out crowd. And then you have a game against Kentucky, who has beat you the last 2 years. Mark Stoops has beaten Florida more times in the last 2 years than the 5 coaches before him did in the previous 33.
Woo!
You have to go on the road into an environment that will be more hostile. I would venture more hostile than Salt Lake City was, which gave Florida a lot of trouble. So those
people are going to be hungry for another win against Florida.
It's beat Florida or it's basketball season in Lexington. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
Then you've got this little Charlotte 49er team with a coach who doesn't wear sleeves on the sideline. Very easy to overlook. Shout out to Biff Poggi. Poggi? I don't know how you say it, but my guy is electric. Wait till you see him. Wait till you see him on the sideline. No sleeves. Shout out to him. But this is a trap game. Super easy to overlook Charlotte. And think ahead to Kentucky. It's another SEC opponent you're sandwiched in. And not even just Kentucky. Like, you're into a full 7 weeks of SEC play after this. So
yeah,
you're gonna have to, if you've been looking in the mirror too long this week, you might run up and have a 1-score 10-point game at halftime against Charlotte.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, what this team looks like on Saturday night, because if they don't bring their A game, if they don't show up to the ballpark the right way, they still will win. But, if it is a sloppy game or an uninspiring performance, that's not what they're going to want heading back into conference play. So we'll get into previewing this matchup here in a moment, but want to give a shout out next to My Perfect Franchise. If you're ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy can help. Andy is a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at myperfectfranchise.net or calling or texting him at 404 973 9901. And Nick, as we turn the page now on this matchup, this is not a game where Florida, is going to be pretty much outmatched in any position. They're going to have the advantage on both sides of the ball, probably even in the special teams department. And I think that we can start there as we, get into keys to this game for Florida and what they need to do. To me, it starts with special teams. Like, they've had issues on offense before early in the season and then shown improvements. Obviously, weren't able to run the ball the first game. The last two games, they've been able to get it going on the ground. Defensively, did a lot of good things, and then the one thing they hadn't been doing was get a turnover, and they finally did that against Tennessee. Special teams is the one department where every single game there has been something, obviously some worse than others, but maybe this is the first time we get a clean game from that team, from special teams.
I've got nothing nice to say about Florida's special teams.
Trey Smack. Hold on. Let's talk. But before you get into it, you need to address what's up with your boy. What is going on with your boy?
As the assistant athletic director for punting propaganda, we have no official comment at this time, other than that we respect your privacy during this clearly troubling time. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on.
That's a press release.
Where Trey Smack is should be the starter Saturday night. We'll see.
What are we doing? What are we doing here? What are we doing? What are we doing at practice?
Practice.
Adam Mahalik had the worst kicking field goal percentage last year since Austin Harden in 2015. And that's when we as reporters had to sit at games when the kickers came out and report on how badly Austin Harden did in warmups before he kicked 57%. Both kickers said that they were near 90% in practice. That's cool. That's not at all what we're seeing on Saturdays. We didn't see it last year, and we hadn't seen it this year. Trey Smack comes in and shoots a 137-mile-an-hour football off his foot into the second deck for his first PAT. Continues to launch missiles off of his right foot. What are we watching? What is happening in practice? Is Trey Smack tripping and falling on his face in practice? What we've seen in the game is nowhere close. And then Billy on Monday and Wednesday is like, yeah, I think both guys we have confidence in. How?
Now, again, if we're gonna play that card about comments in the media, you know what he's doing. He is not going to go out there and, you know what, man, Adam he's stinking it up, and we're going to have to move on. Now, I know that there may be some coaches that would say that, but maybe he's worried about the psyche of his kicker, trying to keep him engaged. I get. What I am surprised is that he's just not come out and said Trey's the starter. I get the positive compliments to Adam and saying, hey, you've gone out on the golf range and had a bad day. He's got to do that especially for his kicker. But he also, I think, is got another scholarship kicker right there to start.
Sure. Trey Smack should be handling all kicking duties until he proves otherwise.
Now that is, I think, the crossroads that we've reached at this point. Like
that, crossroads. We blew the stop sign, Zach. We're past that. Drove by the fork in the road and went straight.
Yeah, it's and not only that, Trey's the future too. He's your scholarship kicker. He's the younger guy. I mean, it's time for him to take the job, and If he clearly is not ready for it, a few more games in the SEC play, well, then maybe you give Adam another shot. But like you said, I mean, maybe Trey's just stinging it up in practice, and he's a gamer. I don't know.
Like, is he kicking lefty in practice? Like, what is Chris Couch looking at in practice to be like, yeah, this is close?
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's obviously worth monitoring. Ricky Pearsall hasn't gotten a punt return yet. Hasn't gotten an opportunity to return a punt yet.
We've had we've been treated some great punters on the other side of the field. My goodness. If you guys want to talk about cross-shot, but we got to talk about the other three. Utah's punter. I don't know where my Ray Guy vote's going at the end of the year, Zach. Florida's faced 3 great punters. Not even really getting a chance to return anything. And I think that's fine. Sticking on special teams, I think Tennessee was either a field goal or a PAT, and Florida had 10 guys on the field. There's just not a lot to look at Florida's special teams and feel good about. And there hasn't been for 17 games now.
Chris Sorley says that it's going to take Adam missing a game-winning field goal for Billy to snap.
He shouldn't be on the field for a game-winning field goal.
Yeah, hopefully for Florida's sake, it doesn't come to that point.
This week.
or at any point. I mean, to Chris's comment, like, this is a concern. It's not going to be a concern for this game, but
it's a concern because
if you go to Kentucky or you go to South Carolina and it's a 3-point game or a 2-point game, you got a chance to win it. Now you don't feel good about your kicking situation at all.
When we do our game day predictions, I make sure that I don't have a field goal factored into my final score for Florida. I think I went 49 points this week. Couldn't go 45.
I think Trey's
making a field goal. That means someone's making a field goal. Couldn't do it last week.
Trey got one last week. Trey got
last week. Last week I said 28. I think I said Florida 28-20, or something like that. And I was like, yep, 28, no field goals. Like that's where I'm at with Florida special teams.
All right, well, let's move on because I think we've talked a little bit too much about special teams.
Although it is damn blood pressure now. Woo!
I mean, this is the area of most concern. So I mean, it's worth starting with. But the second and probably would have more impact on this game is the offensive line. Florida's going to have 3 new offensive line starters in this game. Now, one of them has already made 2 starts this season, and Jake Slaughter, who's back in the starting lineup for Kingsley Aguakin, who's out, still maybe lingering issues with that ankle injury. But because of the suspensions, God, we didn't even talk about that, Nick. We didn't even get into the post-game or the end-of-game scuffle. But Micah Mazuka in the boxing academy and Damian George and Dante Xander's all going to have to sit.
Just wait until Micah announces that Everlast NIL deal. Micah Mazuka boxing gloves, Everlast, limited edition.
Some boxing company is missing a knockout opportunity. But without, and look, we've had fun with it. Fans clearly had fun with it. I would imagine that in Gainesville, Florida on September 23rd, you're going to see shirts outside of Benzel Griffin Stadium that have that picture on it. I think that
Mazuka was ready to throw a bazooka, Zach.
But as much as fans had fun with it, we had fun with it. They took it serious. I know Rob Sale gave him the business on the sideline right as it was still all going down. That was not what they want. I mean, obviously when your guys step up to defend your teammates, I think it does a lot for morale. And look, at the end of the day, I think they'll feel like it was worth the suspension. But definitely don't want him doing that again. But with him out and with Damian George out, that's going to present opportunities for Lindell Hudson and Najee Harris to make their first starts as Gators. First career start for Najee. And obviously Lindell has started plenty of games at FIU, but now he gets to suit up for the orange and blue in the starting lineup and see what he can do at right tackle, which I'm intrigued because I've been impressed with what I've seen from him in his reps.
Yeah. I think the opportunity here, as I watch Damian George, I don't love him at tackle. Watching his feet and kind of the way he moves, think he'd be a great right guard. Obviously, you have Mazuka and Leonard there, but if Lindell Hudson can show you, hey, I can be a quality right tackle starter, now you've got four guys at guard with Najee Harris being the fourth there with him and
Mhm.
George backing those guys up. You've got a great depth on the interior.
And George, by the way, played both inside and outside at Alabama, so he's got that experience.
So this is an opportunity for a guy in Lindell Hudson who I haven't really been high on. I think he was a decent player at FIU, but this is a whole different ball game, a whole different stage. Not this week. Would expect him to look
Yes,
more
it's
than competent against
great,
Charlotte.
great game for him to kind of get his feet wet.
So it's a huge opportunity. I think the world of Najee Harris. I think there's a great chance for a bunch of guys, Farmer, to get involved, and a bunch of guys in the offensive line. It's going to be out of necessity for that first half. And then I wonder, do you just make it a whole game for Mike and Mazuka? Like if you're up 28-0, 28-3 at halftime,
And
do you
George,
need to
too.
do you need to throw Mazuka and George in there to maybe potentially have somebody, get tackled and roll up an ankle before
I
you
mean,
can before you can get
Xander's,
tackled?
too. Xander's doesn't need the second half. I mean, the guy's a 6-year
Yeah,
senior.
sure. You can throw him in there though. Whatever.
No, I look, this is first start for Arliss Boardingham. Hayden Hansen is now starting. Tony Livingston is out, unfortunately, but I think you build for the future in this game, man. I don't think if I'm Billy, I want my team to play well enough in that first half that I don't have to play Xanders, George, or Mazuka at all. They just take the night off. But it will be interesting to monitor how that affects this offense, how that affects the running game. Do they take a step back? Is Charlotte able to have some success potentially at the line of scrimmage because of some of those changeups? But at the end of the day, this should be a cakewalk for Florida, no matter who's lining up along the offensive line. So, but this is a game where I think that TNT is going to be heavily featured. Try and get those guys their carries and get them out. I don't know how much we'll see from the passing game, Nick. What do you expect? I mean, there's no Trey Wilson.
I think this is an opportunity. So after the Utah game where you weren't able to run the ball, you saw Florida come out and force the issue. We're going to run the ball. Sure,
Yes.
we'd probably be able to throw it all over the yard against McNeese, but we're going to force the issue. We need to work on this. I think where you are right now, if I'm Florida, I just wrote a story this week looking at Graham Mertz's every pass Graham Mertz has thrown this year. I think you need to start, hey, can we put on tape that we can force the ball down the field, that we can push the ball down the field? Right now, Graham Mertz, more than 65% of his passes that are completed are traveling less than 9 yards in the air. A good portion of them are at or behind the line of scrimmage. So I think at least to get it on tape or to get some rhythm and some momentum and show that you can do it, try to hit some deeper passes, whether that's play action. Florida hasn't really thrown super well off of play action this year. I'd like to see Florida at least try to work on that, work on the downfield passing game, try to get some pocket protection, give Graham some time in the pocket so he's not running and scrambling, to let those longer plays develop.
No doubt. We'll get into a question here from Harrison, which is brought to you by Prairie Dental Center. Doctor's a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for more than 3 decades and has developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide more effective and efficient care to his patients. If you're having dental concerns or need a cleaning, go to Prairie Dental Center and give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. Harrison wants to know, what wrinkle do we see added to the offense this week? Now, and before you say, well, why would Billy show a new wrinkle in this matchup? Well, he did against McNeese. He unveiled the Wildcat with Eugene Wilson that they used in the red zone, got an 18-yard carry out of it. Obviously, a lot of stuff that they could do off of that package. But Eugene's not playing this week, so we're not going to see the Wildcat. Do we see maybe somebody else run that package? Does Billy unveil something else? I don't know. One thing that I do want to see, though, sticking on the freshman wide receiver, is the other freshman wide receivers. I mean, this is a game for Andy Jean and Aiden Mizell to get some run and to maybe make some plays. I mean, I would love to see just Aiden go on a go route and be able to hit a deep ball with him.
This kind of week where you can try stuff that you just want to put on film, because if you haven't, if a team hasn't seen it, they don't need to prepare for it. And even if you aren't going to, like, hey, you mentioned Aiden Mizell, like, hey, Florida hasn't run a flea flicker, might not ever run a flea flicker against Kentucky or against LSU, but you can probably get away with it throwing a flea flicker to Aiden Mizell against Charlotte. And now everyone has to put that into their game plan and practice that when they're playing Florida, because it's on film and they've seen, hey, 11's fast. Florida can get him the ball. And that's an easy way to get Aiden Mizell in the game, get a big play potentially, get the fans who've sold out the stadium excited. And then it's just another thing that teams are going to play on the rest of the schedule are going to see on film and have to prepare for. And don't tell me like, oh, you want to save that for Baton Rouge. Like, you probably won't have time to run a flea flicker against LSU, but you're going to have LSU waste their time getting ready for the potential of it because they saw it on film.
I just want to say this to Harrison's question, because I know that we're not going to see it this week because Florida hasn't fit the criteria, or Florida hasn't fit Billy's criteria. But it was pointed out on social media, formerly Twitter, but now X.com. Nick, do you remember what Anthony Richardson grew up calling himself? Or, once he got to high school?
Cam Richardson.
No.
Cam Jackson?
Cam Jackson is exactly what he called himself, a mix of Cam Newton and Lamar Jackson. Well, there's a Cam Jackson Florida football team now, folks. Anthony kind of spoke that one into existence.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, what I would love to see, and Billy says that this will only happen when the Gators get top 10 in scoring defense and top 10 in total defense. Well, they're top 10 in total defense right now. I think they're like 30th in scoring defense, so they need to get that up. This game should help. But get in the top 10 so we can see Cam Jackson at quarterback and Des Watson at running back. Goal line package. Cam handing it off to Big Des for 6.
No, Des said he doesn't want that. Remember, we asked him last year. He's like, not about that. So give me.
But he's a former running back. He's got to do it for the team.
Give me a strong power eye. Graham Mertz under center, 2 tight ends. Des Watson's your fullback, and Cam Jackson's your running back. You tell 99 to follow 21 into the end zone. That's a lot of human being.
I like that. I want one of those guys.
Give me a Jeremy Crawshaw fake punt. Happened against Vanderbilt at home. My guy felt like he was back on the rugby pitch. Best way to fix a shank is just to have him run it.
I think Nick might have unlocked another key to the game.
Listen,
just snap him out of those shanks.
Fake all of them. He's an athlete. Let him be an athlete.
He is an athlete. Well, obviously, a final key would be on the defensive side. We can't close out this episode without talking about Austin Armstrong's unit. We mentioned that they're a top 10 defense so far this season. Obviously, took a really tough test against Tennessee and answered that challenge very well, especially against the tempo, which we mentioned. Now you come into this week where with another chance to probably dominate. Maybe your second or third string defense gives up some points at the end, but look, I think you just kind of pick up where you left off. I mean, you're not not affected, obviously, by any injuries or anything like that this week. I mean, knock on wood, they're healthy on that side of the ball, Nick. I just think that they got to build on what they showed against Tennessee and keep playing at this level, sustain this.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. If you start, smelling your own cologne too much, like Billy said, staring in the mirror, you can get caught slipping. You welcome back. Listen, this is a brand new Charlotte team. Biff Poggi came in, added like 60 new players. Jalen Jones will be back in Gainesville for the first time since sexual assault allegations led him to leave Florida. I think just played in one spring game. Brand new roster. They gave Maryland a tough game. I think they went up 14-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jarius Mack, Jalen Jones hit Jarius Mack for a nearly 50-yard touchdown. Then they had a pick six, and then obviously Maryland turned it on. But this is a team who, with their sleeveless, cigar-wielding head coach, will believe that they can win. And you just have to not let that belief linger and last. The longer you let a team believe that they can hang with you, and the closer the game is, weird things start to happen. So for Florida, you just have to play your brand and play to your capabilities. And this game should be over by halftime, which is good for us when it comes to writing.
It is, and we put out a quarterly report over at Gators Online that looks at how Florida's players have performed through the first 3 games of the season, 3 of 12, and who have graded out as the top 10 players, according to Pro Football Focus. And if you go over there and check out that list, it is very encouraging for the future.
Young.
Well, not only young, there's a couple upperclassmen there, but there is one thing that all 10 players have in common. And if you go check out that story, maybe you'll pick up on it. But one thing that I will give away is
they're not on special teams.
Well, that's a giveaway. 7 of the top 10 are defensive players. And that is a very good sign. And then on top of that, you get 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 10 are true freshmen. 3 of them on defense. So it's just it's been very impressive, I think, what we've seen on that side of the ball. And to Billy's point, it's not just Austin Armstrong. It is the personnel that they've added, the recruits that they've signed, the transfers that they've brought in. I think putting Corey Raymond in charge of the secondary. Obviously, Jay Bateman has done a great job, man, at that inside linebacker spot. He got Amari Burney and Ventrell Miller playing at an elite level last year. Both of those guys got picked. And now he's got Shamar James and Scooby Williams playing lights out. And then you know what you're going to get from Coach Chaos along that defensive line. So just across the board, Nick, I mean, it's there's a lot to like about this unit. Again, this is an opportunity for a lot of these freshmen that we've mentioned to get even more playing time and to get even more experience. The Kelby Collinses, the Cameron James, TJ Searcy, those guys like that who have all looked really good and played at a high level. But they can only get better from here.
Yes. And should be a great night in the swamp. Do you think, first off, I haven't done this yet. Hats off to the fans last week. Read the homework assignment, wore blue, packed the stadium. The student section, I've been hard on you. You guys always tell me that I'm being too hard, that I'm an old man. We're tailgating. We'll be there when we get there. Student section was there early. They were loud. There's a big push to get people to wear orange this week, and I don't think that's going to be a thing. I think last week it's like, hey, it's Tennessee week, you wear blue. When Kentucky comes, you wear orange or you wear white. You don't wear blue when Kentucky's here. I just don't think there's a lot of Florida fans that are like, yeah, I'm going to wear orange because it's a big game against Charlotte.
Well, they wore white the first week. They weren't as coordinated as they were against Tennessee with the blue. But there was certainly you can notice the white in the stands. It was supposed to be a whiteout, but I don't think that the message got relayed as well as it did the second week. Everyone knew to wear blue. But I tell you what, they're going to be wearing black against Arkansas.
That's yeah.
that memo is going to get sent.
Watch that damn game be noon. Watch that be a noon kick.
It better not.
They're gonna you got to grease some palms. Like if I'm Scott Strickland, I'm like, hey, who needs, like, we have the president of Augusta National is a Gator. Like, who at ESPN needs to play around at Augusta to make sure that's a 7:00 kickoff against Arkansas? That can't be a noon game.
It can't even be a 3:30 game, man. Like, that is a night game.
Listen, I know that game is in early November, but like, it's if that's a noon game in early November, it's still gonna be 85 degrees.
No, it's
and black's just not an option. It's just not an option if you're sitting in the stand.
As much as it sucks for you and I, Nick, shout out to the TV folks or whoever has been in charge with scheduling these first 3 games for the Gators, because they got it right. They're all at night. It's September. That's what it should be. 3:30 games and even noon games you can get away with in November. But, man, that Florida Arkansas game, that's got to be a night one. Otherwise, you defeat the whole purpose of the all
just a travesty. That's a noon
a blackout in the swamp at noon.
At noon, what a disaster! The blackout.
Oh man. Well, I'm glad that no more blackouts for you, Nick. You're back.
Bro, I was in a bad place. I was in a dark place on Monday.
You were blacked out, and not that kind of blackout.
Bro, I was just 104 fever. It felt like a donkey kicked me in the chest.
Well, if you feel like a donkey is kicking you in the chest.
What a segue. I can see your gears spinning there.
I mean, you just teed me up, Nick. If you feel like a donkey is kicking you in the chest, or you've got something weighing on you, I want to encourage all Florida fans to go to rogueshop.com. If you have issues sleeping, chronic pain, and or anxiety and stress, Rogue Shop sells CBD, THC, edibles, smokables, and vapes, as well as handcrafted bath salts, soaps, candles, massage oils, pain creams, and topicals. Rogue Shop is a true small business, 5 employees, and they make all of their products with their own cannabis grown in their manufacturing facility. Visit rogueshop.com. That's RUGUESHOP.com.
Bro, gotta up the price for that sponsorship with that kind of lead in. Wild.
That was wild. That was a nice way to end it. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Hold on. Make sure we don't have any
hold up. Wait a minute.
Comment with 8 new comments. So JC says, are we having fun yet? That we are, JC. Yes, we are having fun. So hope you guys have fun. Hope the week has been well.
Let me give a quick shout out to the best man at my wedding. He and his wife, JC, just reminded me, just had their first child born this week. Walker Ronald Johnson. Welcome to the world, young man.
All right.
And for him, for young Walker, go blue. It's a Michigan family there.
Oh, so he's not Walker, Texas Ranger.
That's what I'm calling him. That's what Uncle Nick is calling him.
Well, congrats to them. And again, thanks to everybody for tuning in, for reading all of our stuff at Gators Online. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe to this channel for a bunch of more content coming this weekend from the Swamp. It'll be another fun one, and then we won't be back in there until homecoming for Vanderbilt. So make sure that you guys follow along. Appreciate everybody for tuning into this live show, dropping questions in there, and we will see you guys next week. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Albaverdi.